two giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, because I thought we were doing some really good things, but then we got that takeaway, had a takeaway negated by an offside.
And this one is picked off and going back the other way. The Eagles, Andrew Makuba. A pick six the other way.
Dylan Gabriel was not better than Shedeur Sanders in minicamp when the rookies was there. He was not better at minicamp or training camp when the veterans was there. He did not perform better than him during the game he was in. And it's time out for people with the cap.
View him as somebody who could position himself to be that QB2. And if he's not in that position, but he's playing well, we know that the reason that would be the case is because they don't want people clamoring for Shedeur Sanders prematurely.
When it comes to being a supercomputer, he was only second to Skynet in the Terminator series. He is now capable of sending Terminators backwards and forward through time, waging a war with the Shedeur Sanders fans.
Yeah, pleased with Shedeur, pleased with the offense. Again, not perfect, plenty that we can work on, but I thought the guys did a really nice job of Shedeur and operating, the guys making plays. So again, a ton to teach off of.
And that comes with going up against competition. Of course, second and third units and all of that stuff come into play. When you're the reigning defending Super Bowl champions, had he shown up this weekend and balled out again, you know, playing 45 or more snaps like he did in the first game and putting up similar, if not better numbers, I think that would have boded very, very well for him.
The Cleveland Browns locker room just exploded. Kevin Stefanski, the man who's been protecting Dylan Gabriel like a mother hen, finally cracked under pressure and admitted what we've all been screaming from the rooftops. Starting Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders was a catastrophic mistake. But here's the kicker. This isn't just about one bad game. This is about a coach who deliberately sabotaged his own rookie's career, pushed fake injury reports, and watched his golden boy Gabriel throw away games while the real talent sat on the bench. What I'm about to reveal will shock you about how deep this conspiracy goes and why Stefanski's admission changes everything for the Browns' future. What's up, football fanatics? Today we're diving into the most explosive story coming out of Cleveland, and trust me, this goes way deeper than just quarterback drama. We're talking about a head coach who finally admitted he made the wrong call, a backup quarterback whose arrogance might have cost him his career, and a rookie who's been fighting an uphill battle against his own coaching staff. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this moment represents a seismic shift in the Browns organization and what it means for Shedeur Sanders' future. Stick around because the evidence I'm about to present will blow your mind. Let me paint you the picture of what really went down in that disastrous game that finally broke Kevin Stefanski's resolve. We're talking about a performance so catastrophically bad that it forced a stubborn head coach to eat his words in front of the entire football world. Dylan Gabriel didn't just have a bad game, he had a career-defining meltdown that exposed every weakness in his game and every flaw in Stefanski's judgment. The numbers tell only part of the story. 0 touchdowns, multiple turnovers, and missed opportunities that would make a high school coach cringe. But here's what the stat sheet doesn't capture: the body language, the panic in Gabriel's eyes when the pocket collapsed, and the way his teammates' shoulders slumped every time he touched the ball. This wasn't just poor execution, this was a quarterback completely overwhelmed by the moment, cracking under pressure that any NFL starter should handle with ease. But the real bombshell came in Stefanski's post-game press conference. For months, this man defended Gabriel like he was protecting his own son. He made excuses, deflected criticism, and insisted that Gabriel was the future of the franchise. Then, in one brutal moment of honesty, everything changed. 2 giveaways really were the difference there in that first half, Stefanski admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. The defeat in his tone, the way he couldn't quite meet the reporter's eyes, the long pauses before answering questions about Gabriel's future. This wasn't just a coach critiquing a player's performance. This was a man finally confronting the reality that his pet project had failed spectacularly. Gabriel's mistakes weren't just statistical errors, they were momentum killers that shifted entire games. The interception return for a touchdown wasn't just a bad throw, it was a symbol of everything wrong with Stefanski's quarterback evaluation. The fumbles weren't just ball security issues, they were evidence of a player who couldn't handle NFL-level pressure. What makes this even more damaging is the context. Gabriel had every advantage possible: first-team reps, the full support of the coaching staff, and a defense that kept games close enough for him to succeed. Yet he consistently failed to capitalize on these opportunities. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders sat on the sidelines, watching a less talented player squander chances that he could have converted into victories. The most telling moment came when Gabriel, despite his terrible performance, had the audacity to take shots at Sanders, calling him an entertainer rather than a competitor. This wasn't confidence, this was delusion. A quarterback who just threw multiple interceptions and failed to reach the end zone was somehow still trying to diminish the player who should have been starting all along. That level of disconnect from reality tells you everything you need to know about Gabriel's mentality and why Stefanski's faith in him was so misplaced. Now let's expose the real scandal here: how Kevin Stefanski deliberately sabotaged Shedeur Sanders from day one, and why this represents one of the most egregious cases of coaching malpractice in recent NFL history. This wasn't just poor judgment, this was a calculated effort to suppress a talented rookie's development while propping up a coach's pet project. From the moment Sanders stepped into the Browns facility, Stefanski had already made up his mind. Despite Sanders showing superior arm talent, better decision-making, and more natural leadership qualities, he was immediately relegated to second-string status. Think about this logically: you have a rookie quarterback who's generating buzz, showing flashes of brilliance in limited opportunities, and energizing the fan base, yet he can't get a single first-team rep? That's not development, that's deliberate suppression. The evidence is overwhelming when you look at the pattern. Every time Sanders had a good showing, suddenly there were reports about his development needs or questions about his readiness. When fans started clamoring for him to get more opportunities, mysterious injury reports would surface. Stephen A. Smith didn't mince words when he called out this obvious smokescreen, and he was absolutely right. The timing of Sanders' supposed oblique injury was suspiciously convenient, appearing right when roster decisions were being made and momentum was building for him to get more playing time. But here's what really exposes Stefanski's agenda: the way he handled Sanders in press conferences. Listen to his tone when discussing Gabriel versus Sanders. With Gabriel, it was always about potential, about what he could become, about giving him time to develop. With Sanders, it was measured, cautious, almost dismissive. Pleased with Shedeur, pleased with the offense, he'd say, but you could hear the reluctance in his voice, as if he was being forced to acknowledge Sanders' talent against his will. The depth chart manipulation was the smoking gun Stephen A. Smith pointed to, and he was spot on. How do you justify keeping a quarterback who's outperforming your starter in practice buried on the depth chart? How do you explain giving a struggling veteran all the first-team reps while a promising rookie gets scraps? The only logical explanation is that Stefanski was protecting his own reputation by refusing to admit he'd made the wrong choice from the beginning. What makes this even more infuriating is the wasted opportunity. Sanders wasn't just sitting on the bench, he was being actively held back from developing the chemistry with receivers, the timing with the offensive line, and the game experience that every young quarterback needs. Every snap Gabriel took with the first team was a snap Sanders should have been getting. Every game Gabriel struggled through was a game Sanders could have been learning from. The most damaging aspect of this whole situation is how it affected team morale. Players aren't stupid, they can see who gives them the best chance to win. When coaches make decisions based on politics rather than performance, it creates resentment and division in the locker room. Veterans want to win games, and when they see a better player sitting on the bench because of coaching stubbornness, it undermines the entire culture Stefanski claims to be building. The house of cards has finally collapsed, and Kevin Stefanski is standing in the rubble of his own making, forced to confront the reality that his quarterback evaluation was fundamentally flawed. This isn't just about admitting a mistake. This is about a complete philosophical shift that will define the Browns' future and determine whether Stefanski can salvage his reputation as a competent head coach. The turning point wasn't subtle. When a head coach who spent months defending his quarterback suddenly starts calling out that same player's decision-making in public, you know the situation has reached a breaking point. Stefanski's admission that Gabriel's turnovers were the difference wasn't just game analysis, it was a public acknowledgement that his evaluation process had failed spectacularly. This is the same coach who insisted Gabriel was ready to lead, who gave him every opportunity to succeed, and who dismissed calls for Sanders to get more playing time. But here's what makes this situation so critical for the Browns organization: trust. Stefanski has lost the trust of the fan base, who watched him make obviously poor decisions week after week. He's lost the trust of players who saw a better quarterback sitting on the bench while games slipped away. Most importantly, he's potentially lost the trust of ownership, who invested in Sanders as a franchise cornerstone only to watch him get buried on the depth chart. The path forward is clear, but it requires Stefanski to completely abandon his previous approach. Sanders needs to be given the starting job immediately, with full first-team reps and the coaching staff's complete support. No more manufactured competitions, no more excuses about development time, no more protecting Gabriel's feelings at the expense of the team's success. The Browns need to commit fully to Sanders and give him every opportunity to prove he's the franchise quarterback they drafted him to be. However, the damage may already be done to Sanders' development. Months of sitting on the bench, watching inferior play from the sidelines, and dealing with a coaching staff that seemed determined to keep him buried could have lasting effects on his confidence and growth. The Browns will need to work overtime to rebuild that relationship and show Sanders that they're finally committed to his success. The broader implications extend beyond just the quarterback position. This situation has exposed fundamental flaws in Stefanski's evaluation process and decision-making. If he can't properly assess quarterback talent, the most important position in football, what does that say about his ability to evaluate other positions? How can players trust his judgment on playing time, game plans, or personnel decisions? The clock is ticking for Stefanski to prove he can learn from this massive mistake. The Browns have a talented roster that's being wasted while they figure out their quarterback situation. Every game Gabriel starts over Sanders is another game closer to Stefanski's potential firing. The fan base is already calling for changes, and if Sanders doesn't get his opportunity soon, those calls will only get louder. The truth is undeniable. Shedeur Sanders has earned his shot through his performance, his professionalism, and his patience with an unfair situation. Stefanski's admission of Gabriel's failures is just the first step. Now he needs to follow through with action. So there you have it, the complete breakdown of how Kevin Stefanski's stubborn loyalty to Dylan Gabriel nearly destroyed the Browns' quarterback future and why his recent admission changes everything. We've seen a coach finally confront his mistakes, a backup quarterback's arrogance exposed, and a rookie who's been fighting an uphill battle finally getting the recognition he deserves. The evidence is overwhelming. Shedeur Sanders should have been starting from day one, and every game he spent on the bench was a wasted opportunity for the Browns organization. Now the question becomes whether Stefanski will follow through on this realization or continue making the same mistakes that got him into this mess. The Browns' season, and potentially Stefanski's job, depends on getting this decision right. I want to hear your thoughts on this entire situation. Do you think Kevin Stefanski genuinely realizes his mistake, or is this just damage control after Gabriel's failures became impossible to ignore? Should Shedeur Sanders be starting immediately, or does he need more development time? And here's the big question: if you were the Browns owner, would you still trust Stefanski to make the right quarterback decision moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that like button if you think Sanders deserves a shot, and subscribe for more NFL analysis that cuts through the BS and tells you what's really happening. What other quarterback controversies do you want me to break down next?